The antacid is a chemical drug where that used to cure the excess of the acid which has been produced in our stomach. Analgesics are only the drugs, it relieves the pain and it never used to affect for the coordinations which is taking place in our body. Antibiotics are the chemical substances which will be prepared by using microorganisms just to kill the other microorganisms. To fight against the histamine or to fight against the acids, they have used the word anti-acids or antacids. Hello my dear students, a warm welcome you all. Myself is Purnima, lecturer in Department of Chemistry at Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. My dear students, in our last discussion, we were dealing with the unit called Chemistry in Everyday Life. Under that, we talked about the few important things about the drugs and also we learned about the classifications of the drugs. And also we have understood that how the drug-target interactions will be taking place in our body. And also we have understood about the receptors and the receptors as a drug target. Today, let us move on to the next topic of this unit, that is therapeutic actions of different types of the drugs and types of antimicrobial drugs. So directly I'll move towards the therapeutic actions of different types of the drugs. So again, this therapeutic actions of the different types of the drugs can be asked for 2 marks. You must understand the types of therapeutic drugs which we discuss now along with one example. The definition and the example you must remember when they ask you to write about the therapeutic drugs. First, I'll go for the antacid. We are all familiar with the antacid, is it right? The antacid is a chemical drug where that used to cure the excess of the acid which has been produced in our stomach. Is it right? The chemical substances which neutralizes the excess of acid in the gastric juice and gives the relief from the acid indigestion and acidity and the heartburns and the gastric ulcer. They are known as antacid. So what is an antacid? It is a chemical substances that mainly used to give the relief on the gastric ulcer or the gastric indigestion or the acidity which is caused mainly due to the excess of acid which has been produced on the stomach. An example for this is and digene and gelatin. So these are the example for the antacid which we take just to reduce the excess of acid which has been produced in our stomach. Okay, the first one is antacid. Next we'll go for the antihistamine. Why they have given antacids or the antihistamine? Because to fight against the histamine or to fight against the acids, they have used the word antacids or antacids. Okay. Then antihistamine, the chemical substances which diminishes or abolishes the effect of histamine which has been produced in our body and prevent the allergic reaction. Suppose in your body, if any allergic reactions which is taking place, in that situations, in our body, excess amount of histamine will be produced. In such situation, we used to take a drug called as histamine that will suppresses the production of histamine which will be produced during the allergic reactions in our body. The example is bromophenamine and terfenadine are the 2 examples for the antihistamine. So these are the important useful therapeutic drugs which we used in our daily life. The first one is most common, antacid, and the definition you must know and one example. And coming into the antihistamine, antihistamines are the chemical substances which will be mainly helps to inhibit the histamine which has been produced in our allergic reactions in our body. And one example you must remember. And next comes to the neurological active drugs. The drugs which have a neurological effect or the effect that message transfer mechanism from the nerve to receptors. So this neurological drugs or the neurological active drugs which are mainly linked to the nerve to the receptor. Let's see what are the neuroreceptors drug actions. First one is transducer. It is a neurologically active drug. These are the chemical substances used for the treatment of stress and the mild severe mental diseases. So, if the person has got into the deeper depression, or suppose if we get the too much of stress, in such situations, we used to take the transducers. These are the neurologically active drugs which are mainly linked to the nerves as well as with the receptors. Example for this is the derivatives of barbituric acids or barbituric acids like veneronal and amytol and nimbutal, luminol are the example for the transducers. These are the drugs which is taken in our body only when the person which is having a stress or he may having the mild mental disorder also, or he might have a depression in their body also. So in such situations, the doctor, they used to suggest to take the transducers. And next one is analgesics. The chemical substances used to relieve the pain without causing any disturbance in the nervous system like impairment of consciousness and the mental confusion and incoordinations or the paralysis. They are known as analgesics. Analgesics are the drugs which has been taken only to relieve the pain in our body. Suppose if the drug which will be mainly causes the impairment in our body or causes the mental disorders, especially in the confusion, and also if it is making the incoordinations in our eye and hand, and also suppose if it is makes a paralysis, such drugs we cannot say it is analgesics. Analgesics are only the drugs, it relieves the pain. And it never used to affect for the coordinations which is taking place in our body. It may be a mental confusions, or it may be paralysis, or it may be impairment of the consciousness. So these are the certain impairment which is taking place in our body when we used to take the certain type of drugs. But analgesics, these are the drugs, it mainly helps in relieving the pain. That's all. It never used to affect for the consciousness or to the impairment, or it may be a mental confusions, or it may be a paralysis, etc. And next one is classifications of analgesics. These analgesics are also of two types. They are non-narcotic analgesics and narcotic analgesics. First, I'll go for the non-narcotic analgesics. They are the non-additive drugs, and example is aspirin and brufen and neophene and dichlorophenic sodium. These are the drugs which we are very much familiar in our daily life. For example, aspirin and paracetamol. These are the drugs which we take just to cure the pain. Suppose if I have a headache, I'll take the aspirin. Suppose if I have a fever, I'll take the paracetamol. Is it right? So these are the certain kind of the drugs which will be not addicted by the person. Only when the pain is there in our body, we used to take certain kinds of drugs. It mainly helps to relieve the pain. That's all. They are known as non-narcotic drugs. It never addicted to the person. And narcotic drugs are the drugs, when they are administered in the medical doses, these drugs will relieve the pain and produce the sleep. This narcotic analgesics, if you take it in the excess amount, maybe the person will get addicted with the higher doses. In the higher doses, which also causes a loss of certain organs which is present in our body. That is why, doctors which always suggest to take the medicines under the prescriptions by the are doctors only. Is it right? If not, we should not take the tablets from the medical shops and all. So it will cause us a further different impairment of the organs in our body. That is why you must be very specific in taking the medicines. And narcotic drugs are the drugs which will be, if you are taken in a higher doses, it will cure the pain. But if you are taken in a higher doses, it will be get addicted to the body. Example is morphine and the derivatives. And next comes to the antimicrobials. These antimicrobials are the drugs which tends to destroy or prevent the development of or the inhibition of pathogenic actions of the microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi and other parasites. So what are antimicrobial? These are the drugs which we take just to inhibit their growth or just to stop their microbial actions which is taking place in our body. We know that there are two types of microorganisms are there. One is a friendly microorganism, another one is a disease-causing microorganism. Is it right? So the disease-causing microorganisms such as a bacteria, especially some fungi and some parasites, it will be causes a diseases to our body itself. They are known as a pathogenic microorganism, we can say that. Such pathogenic microorganisms can be inhibited by taking the antimicrobial. Example, for the bacteria, we can take the antibacterial drug. For the fungi, we can take the anti-fungi agents. Or for the parasites also, we can take the anti-parasitic drugs. Suppose if the virus is there, we can take the antiviral agents. This is how the microorganism which cannot be helpful for us, especially the pathogenic microorganism which causes the diseases in our body, In such situation, we need to go for the antimicrobial drugs. So it mainly helps to destroy the drug completely, either it will stop their growth in our body. And next comes to the anti-fertility drugs. So these are the chemical substances which mainly help us to prevent the consumption of or fertilization. They are known as anti-fertility drug. So during the combinations of sperm with the egg, or we can say that during the binding of a sperm with the egg, conceptions will be taking place in a female. That can be prevented by taking anti-fertility drug. It will mainly avoid the fertility of the egg which is taking place in the female during the consumption. And the example for this is norethindrone and ethylene estradiol is a example for the anti-fertility drug. Okay. Next comes to the antibiotics. Antibiotics are the chemical substances which are produced by the microorganisms only. As I have explained that certain microorganisms are so useful to the human beings. So antibiotics are mainly prepared by the microorganisms only and that are used to kill or to prevent the growth of other microbes. Okay. So that mainly used to kill the other microbes. By utilizing these microbes only, we can prepare the medicine, especially the drug called as antibiotics. And these antibiotics can also be classified into further type. The classification of antimicrobial drugs based upon the mode of control on the microbial diseases. First one is bactericidal drugs and bacteriostatic drugs. First, I'll go for the bactericidal drugs. These are the drugs which kill the microorganisms in the body itself. For example, penicillin. Penicillin we are very much familiar, is it right? So when we born, we used to take the penicillin, especially when we are in the adult stage, we used to take the penicillin injection. Why we used to take the penicillin injection? Only because if any microorganisms are there in our body, that can be killed by using the microorganisms only. That is known as antibiotics. Is it right? They are known as antibiotics because these are the drugs which kill the microorganisms within our body. Hence it is known as bactericidal drugs. Example is penicillin and aminoglycidols and afloxacin, etc. Then come to the bacteriostatic drugs. These are the drugs which inhibits the growth of microorganism. It never kills the microorganism, but it will inhibits the growth in our body. They are known as bacteriostatic drugs. Okay. Example is erythromycin, tetracycline, chloromorphinicol is an example for a bacteriostatic drugs. Now you have understood that what is antibiotics. Remember, antibiotics are the chemical substances which will be prepared by using microorganisms just to kill the other microorganisms. Okay, that is are of two types. The first one is bactericidal and bacteriostatic. Bactericidal are the drugs that used to kill the drug directly in our body itself, whereas the bacteriostatic drugs which mainly used to inhibits the microorganism growth in our body. Next is a types of antimicrobial drugs. Under that we are going to understand the classification of antimicrobial drugs based upon the spectrum of action. Spectrum of action here which indicates that how long it will kill the microorganisms in our body, that is said to be a spectrum action. Okay. The first one is broad spectrum antibiotics. These are the antibiotics which kill and inhibits the wide range of a gram-positive and a gram-negative bacteria. They are called as broad spectrum antibiotics. Broad spectrum antibiotics are the antibiotics which kills a broad range of a gram-negative and a gram-positive bacteria which is present in the body. Ampicillin and amoxicillin are the example for the broad spectrum antibiotic. Coming into the narrow spectrum antibiotics, antibiotics which are effectively mainly against the gram-positive or the gram-negative bacteria, they are known as a narrow spectrum antibiotics. Particular antibiotics, especially, this will go and attacks to the particular microorganisms only. They are known as narrow range or the narrow spectrum antibiotics. For example, you can take the penicillin G. It will goes and attacks to the gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria which has been present in our body. So it never goes beyond that. It will goes and attacks to the gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria which is present in the body. Next is limited spectrum antibiotics. The antibiotics which affect is against to the single organisms or to the diseases. To the particular diseases or to the particular organisms, it goes and it will attacks and it will cure the diseases. This is how, the antibiotics which also can be classified based upon the spectrum of action. The broad spectrum means these are the antibiotics which can kill the entire microorganism which is not good for our body. Whereas the narrow spectrum antibiotics are the substances which goes and kill to the particular organisms, especially it may be gram-positive or the gram-negative. Whereas the limited spectrum antibiotics is directly it goes and affects to the particular single organism or to the single diseases. Hope you all understood this classification. Again, this is very much important for the examination point of view, especially for the 2 marks they can ask this. Next comes to the antiseptics and disinfectants. We all know that we are familiar with the antiseptics as well as with the disinfectants. Is it right? When we get the wound or when you get the accident, suddenly you will apply the antiseptic. Then what is the antiseptic? Antiseptics are the substances that kills or prevent the growth of microorganisms and that can be applied on the living tissue such as cuts, wound, etc. They are known as antiseptic. Example is Dettol and the Saffromycin are the example for that. Is it right? Suddenly if I get an accident, suddenly if I cut my hands, what I used to do? I used to get the apply of antiseptics. These are the chemical substances, mainly it will prevent or it will kill the growth of microorganisms. When we go to the hospital first, if we get accident or any other thing which has happened, the first stage will be done by using antiseptics only. And next comes to the disinfectants. Suppose in our daily life, in order to clean the objects which is there in our surrounding, we use a certain chemicals. Is it right? Just to clean the wall or just to clean their glass item, everything, we use a disinfectant. Then what is the disinfectant? These are the chemical substances which kill a microorganism but cannot be applied on the living tissues such as the wounds or the cut nails. Example, they are known as disinfectants. Example, chlorine 2, vithanol and iodoform, etc. Just to clean the wall or just to clean the doors and all, nowadays we put the disinfectants just to make the surrounding clean. Even to clean the entire floor also we use a Dettol. Is it right? Like that, to clean the floor or to clean the certain objects in our daily life, we use a disinfectants, but remember, which cannot be applied on the living tissues which is found in our body. Okay, this is all about the therapeutic uses of the drugs and the types of antimicrobial drugs. In the next session, we are going to discuss with the chemicals which is found in the food. Okay. By this, I like to say that what are all the things which I covered in this session, especially the therapeutic drugs and their uses, it is very important for the examination point of view, especially for the 2 marks, that can be asked with the definition with the one example and focused on the types of antimicrobial drugs. So, we'll meet you in the next session. Till then, take care and be safe. Thank you.